Good evening, Molly. It's a pleasure to have you here at the Interspecies Conclave. I know you have spent your last decade working with different local communities to help them with conservation and helping in biodiversity, naming the Timbaktu Collective. But before jumping into your work, I just wanted to know a little bit about your journey, what motivated you to get into this sector and space.
It was by default because I was brought up this way. So my parents are both social workers and chose to live and work in rural Andhra. And as their child, and without much agency to say no, default I was brought up, off-grid and no running water in the middle of nowhere. And it was a grand experiment that they were trying to live and work in rural areas with the community. And so I can't really say there's been at one point where I said I will now do this. It's just happened like that. But at the same time, it is very, all the work is very aligned with what I'm very passionate about. So I have tried working in the corporate sector, lasted a few months, and I've tried distancing myself and getting into more of an academic space, which I do at some a certain level, but my parents' journey has influenced me greatly, and it's as much been my journey as well. Yeah.
I actually wanted to know a little bit about Timbaktu Collective as the place that you're working in. What state is it in today, and what is its vision?
What state are we in today?
Yeah.
Wow. Well, I'm actually working with Timbaktu at this point. With Timbaktu Collective, that's the NGO. Timbaktu itself is a community. It's an agroforest community, about 70 people including a school. So there's multiple entities when we say the whole world Timbaktu. Well, to be very frank, I mean, because of living and working in a place like that, there is no distance and no buffer to see what's happening to the natural world. So, and by that I mean that I can have a certain level of, I can choose to engage with the natural world in the city. Like right now we don't know if the sun has set.
Right.
Yeah, so that whether it's raining outside, etc. In most of the places that Timbaktu Collective works and where we live, we can't really choose how we interact with the natural world. You're very much a part of it. There's no buffer. Therefore, even if it's a bad thing happening, we see it firsthand, and you see the impact direct. You can't really turn away from it. At the same time, the positives also you can see very fast. So within a year, if you do protect, say, one hillside for 1 year and allow the monsoon rains to come, stay, you do a bit of seedling plantation, etc. In 1 year, you see the growth. So everything is very direct. So I would say the state of the world, we know, okay, there is ecological collapse, the state of the world. And at the same time, we have rapid advancements happening in health, in tech. I would say various global politics are advancing, good and bad. Trade is advancing. And well, that's a very broad question, so I'm going to just stick with the ecological side of things for now. Yeah.
All right. I mean, yeah, that makes sense that the impact, whatever is happening in a direct level to the nature is more felt there than in like urban places, definitely, like you mentioned.
And in urban, again, depends which urban, no? Because if we're saying the urban poor who are living in slums, then yes, they very much know if the sun is setting or rising, whether the house is going to get flooded with today's rain or not. So I'm not making such a reductionist thing saying urban or rural, but I'm just saying that there are certain sections and lifestyles which allow you to say, hey, I'm not really in tune with nature and what's happening. I make that choice, so whatever it is, it's a different reality. Whereas the majority living in rural areas are dealing with the elements in a very hands-on way.
Now coming to the actual conference, the interspecies movement, I was just thinking that we are talking about creating a digital twin for various creatures and attaching a numeric value in order to conserve them in the biodiversity. Do you think from an ethical point of view somewhere it crosses the line?
Well, I think as the human species, we crossed the line with valuing things a long time ago. Certain communities and certain people have done that. There are a lot of communities who didn't cross that line and continue to not cross that line. I've always maintained that it's the indigenous people of every land mass. I'm not even going to say country, nation, state, etc. Land mass, subcontinents, mountains, etc., who have never crossed that line. They have put nature above and them as part of the system. They continue to do that. The assault is on that value base, on that value system. And to take, for the majority of the other human beings, again in that is not everybody out there with ill-intentioned devaluation of nature. Some of them have no choice but to participate. Right? So we have kids, we have communities who are mining, who are poaching. They're not doing it because they woke up in the morning saying, I want to harm, I want to extract. It's a certain geopolitical situation that has put them in that role of extraction and devaluing, which I think there's a lot of well-intentioned also thought behind something like this. It's not, I don't see it as a, it's not really crossing a line in an ill-intentional way. It's a well-intentioned thought. But there are ethical questions and the same that I have raised, like who gets to decide, and is there, is it a level playing ground for all of us who speak the same language, and by that I mean human language. In India in particular, I will talk about India in particular. What about the caste system? You know, already with language as a barrier, just take the languages that human beings speak, and then we have the caste system. Then we have regional diversity, biodiversity, flora, fauna diversity. And how is this process going to happen? And you know, so I will take it back to one thing, saying, okay, the nation state of India has the forest department. And today we have an idea of the forest department protection, etc. But it was instituted by the British for timber extraction. So already they have valued saying, there is timber, we need to extract it. Where we have extracted, let's replant. And put a department in place to monitor and protect the timber that we value. So the whole thing of tiger conservation, all this has happened much later. And a part of the problem is also we have, it makes it easier to say, let's protect the tiger. Let's protect the elephant. Let's protect the Western Ghats as a biodiversity hotspot, etc. Does that mean then that other landscapes are up for grabs? Not does that mean, currently that is the situation. It's up for grabs because we're saying the tiger is important, elephant is important, and these forests are important. So keep the people out, keep poaching out, protect the tigers. What about the thousands of other flora and fauna and people who are engaged with that landscape before it was a protected zone? I'm not sure if I answered your questions because I only have more questions about it.
Ma'am, so since you have been working closely with a lot of local communities who are very interpersonally connected to the nature, to the forests, how do you envision explaining something like the interspecies movement to these tribal communities and local communities? Do you envision any challenge or hurdle there?
Most of my work with the communities and conservation is to look at everything other than money. So it's a sense of identity, a sense of pride, a sense of empathy with other creatures. I'm not saying that everybody I work with thinks that every wolf and bear is important, you know, or that they don't want to chase away the wild birds that come to the millet crops and things like that. But what I strive to do is to not make it about money. It's to appeal to something else as an older wisdom in people. Before British came, before there was land divide, before there was farming practices that changed, before your land became capital that you grow a crop to sell, to get money, to eat. These are all newer things. Yeah. So I try to actually not deal with money. to appeal to something else that resides within these communities because they're still in direct contact.
Right.
So an example I can use is when I was 2008 trying to set up a website for a farmer cooperative, all rural farmers. It took me 4 months to explain to them what a website is, really explain. Everything from drawing it out to downloading PPTs to translating into Telugu, sitting with them, going to the fields, etc. And then still not make it my decision to say we need a website. For them to say we want it, yes or no. Now that you know, anybody sitting anywhere in the world can see your millet product. Do you want it? And actually majority of them said no. We don't want. I think it's better if we can take the baskets and sell in Bangalore. And the real customers will come and they'll want to touch the grain. That was their understanding of it. Of course, there could have been a better monetary exchange if we went into online and started shipping to XYZ place. But it was more important for me that they understand and they decide yes or no. My role is only catalyst, or actually at best, or not even at best, at worst, I think sometimes, even with whatever languages I know, I think I still am not able to really explain something. So when I choose to do that and then they understand to whatever level they can understand this foreign concept, see if they're comfortable with it or not.
And it's their decision to take if they want
Yes,
to do it.
and I'd just give one example to illustrate this. We had a research proposal for wild flora and fire ecology. Understand the role of wildfire, what happens with flora species over certain periods. And so research institutions were ready to pump in the money, send the students, work with the community, etc. to do this research. And they're like, okay, we're ready. But it doesn't end there. So I had to take that whole body of information, organize a meeting with the community members and the researchers, mediate, saying this is what they want to do. They want to understand what happens with water, with plants. And they said, what purpose does that serve to us? That research. So end of the day, they decided that they're not interested in that topic of research. They wanted to know about wolf. They want to know about migratory cycles, migration paths of certain other animals. They were not really interested in that. And it's incredible that they took that choice. So I could take this as another concept. In 2008 it was a website, tomorrow it might be interspecies money. But to me it's even more spectacular if they can say, oh, this is the idea, yes, or no.
Right. So we are acting as a catalyst and it's up to them to decide.
I think it would be great if communities could make choices and in a way where they really can advocate for themselves.
Yeah, I'm sure. Like,
yeah.
Who are we to come from an outside and tell you should do this or
yeah.
you should not?
But at the same time, there is a lot of information that's lacking. Globalization, climate change, what's happening with evolution, what's happening with climate collapse. I mentioned this, what's happening with the global financial systems. What were the 2 world wars? What were the implications of the wars? Which countries are in debt? Why are they in debt? Why is India taking loans? Why is your bag of pesticide and seed and fertilizer so cheap? Money. How has money worked through centuries to where you are today? And now that you understand that, would you like to participate in this or would you not?
All right, ma'am, I would like to take a little diversion here and talk about conservation education, right? Because I believe that is something which is at a very grassroots level, and if young minds are made more empathetic and aware towards conservation, I believe that will lead to a better future. So we here at Atria University are actually following the rules of an interdisciplinary STEM education, which is completely on a project-based learning model. So we believe in learn by doing ideology. So do you think students who come out of institutions like these can be the future leaders of movements like interspecies currency?
Yes, if we incorporate more hands-on stuff. You know, I am a big believer in experiential education. I have had, and I do numerous workshops. I've done a lot of workshops with urban children and urban youth. And day one, you know, it's like they're almost frightened. It's just too much because it's like this immersive 5D experience, the sun, and then it's cold, and then there's a freaky looking frog that jumps out of somewhere, and then you have to eat with your hands, and you enter a space, you have to take off your footwear, and then you have to be barefoot. There's a lot of a lot of tactile things happening at the same time. And by day 2, day 3, majority of them have really eased into it. And again, it comes back to what I think is a much older intelligence, a much older wisdom, what feels good and what doesn't, you know. And almost all the kids that I have seen who have fears of animals, fears of just outdoors, have been taught that. The same kid at the age of 1, 2, 3 would have wanted to go touch a dog or a cat. It's just fascinating. The fear, it's highly, I mean, in some situations, yes, something might have happened that has startled the child at a very young age. But mostly what I have seen is it's the adults who say, don't touch that, shoo, chee, dirty, you know, mud is dirty, wear your shoes and play outside. Don't touch this. I'm not talking about like disease, you know, all that, but I'm talking about fear. It's a taught thing.
Trauma and fear. So
yeah.
we're talking about fear here, which is probably coming from the parents. Like
yes, parents, just adults. So actually, I would say a lot of parents who have young children should think, okay, I might be scared, okay, but my child, I have taught the fear. And the world comprises of so many elements, and how long am I going to protect them in my cement school, cement apartment, you know, whatever. And yeah, the whole life trajectory can go that way, can go, you know, very protected and things like that. But there's a whole world out there to discover. It's just beyond fascinating, you know, and that is the majority of the world.
Exactly.
Human built up areas and human built up careers and all is a fraction of it. So I would say the parents need to be more brave, you know, to say, hey, go and explore. It's scarier crossing a road in Bangalore than letting your kid come for like a wildlife workshop or things like that.
For the last question, you have spent a considerably long time in the conservation sector and the biodiversity sector. I just wanted to ask, how do you envision Timbaktu Collective in the next 10 years? What are its goals and what are the vision? And what do you think of the livelihood of the local communities there?
That's a tough one to answer because it's very, there's so many good efforts all over the country, working with communities, working with livelihood, working with conservation. Because so much of my work is the nature of it, I'm not really in tune with what's happening for the government's plans for conservation with communities. But I know of many.
I mean, I'm just trying to understand from your point of view, the role that you're playing probably in the Timbaktu Collective. What would be your goal or vision for the next 10 years?
Oh, if there can continue to be a sense of, I would just say most importantly, pride. For communities, for who they are. Stop for this assault on identity to stop. You don't speak English, you're useless. You don't make money, you're useless. You're in some village, you're useless. No stature in society. What is that society? Who has made that? You know. So for it, and I work on that in many different ways. It's not easy, but for it to begin from everything from food, you know, to have pride in this is our traditional diet, this is our recipe, and no, burger and pizzas are not necessarily the fancy things. You know, the rest of the world is celebrating millet, and now we're having like very ragi crepes with this, that and the other. That's fine because fads will come and fads will go. But for local communities if they have lost it, to gain back, if they have it, to retain. and to really bolster that sense of identity, you know, and to not feel like I don't have an identity or I'm unseen, so let me go make one there, somewhere else, where it's bigger, brighter, snazzier, cities, etc. I'm not saying that's a bad thing to have that aspiration. I'm just saying if in 10 years communities can really have that thing saying, this is us, you know, and we are proud of who we are, that would be amazing.
Great.
Yeah.
It's really insightful.
Yeah.
Thank you so much
Thank
for
you.